On this day in Chaplain Corps history, 6 June 1944, Operation Overlord was the code name, known more popularly as D-Day, when U.S. and Allied troops landed in Normandy. It was the largest seaborne invasion in history. It was also the largest use of airborne troops up to that time, as they landed 4 to 6 hours before the seaborne troops landed. Part of these troops that were landing, both by air and sea, included chaplains. There were a number of chaplains involved, 13 who jumped in with paratroopers, and a large number who went in with the troops on the beachheads. We're going to talk more about some of these chaplains. And on this day in Chaplain Corps history, 6 June 1944. According to a 13 July 1944 Stars and Stripes article, there were 13 chaplains who jumped with the paratroopers into Normandy on D-Day from 4 to 6 hours before the first seaborne unit landed. They were Raymond Hall. He was an Episcopalian. Of note, Chaplain Hall was the first airborne chaplain in the Army, but he was injured on this jump. Then George Wood, also an Episcopalian, with the 82nd Airborne. George Wood, he had a distinguished career with the 82nd, went with them through every major campaign. He had combat jumps into Sicily, Salerno, Normandy, and Holland. He also participated in the Battle of the Bulge, the Ruhr Pocket Operation, the Elbe River Crossing, and then the post-World War II occupation of Berlin. John S. Maloney, Catholic, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. Now, Chaplain Ignatius Maternowski. Chaplain Maternowski, he was from Massachusetts, born 1912, became a Franciscan friar, ordained a priest in 1938. When World War II broke out, volunteered to be a chaplain in July 1942. He went into the Army, and then later volunteered to be in the 508th Parachute Infantry Regiment. On D-Day, he parachuted in with a large number of troops into the occupied territory of Picqueville in Normandy. An American glider had crashed nearby, and there were a lot of casualties, and Maternowski began ministering to the wounded and the dead paratroopers and glider victims. He realized that a hospital was needed, a field hospital. He tried negotiating with his German counterpart, hoping that they could combine their wounded into one common hospital. He'd go between the enemy lines unarmed, wearing his chaplain's insignia and a Red Cross, meeting with the Nazi medic. One time, returning through the no-man's zone to the American side, he was shot in the back by an enemy sniper. So he became the only U.S. chaplain to be killed on D-Day, and he was just 32 years old at the time. Francis Sampson, Catholic. He's had quite the military career. It's said that he was the inspiration for Saving Private Ryan, where he worked to get a soldier home who two of his brothers were confirmed killed in action. One was missing in action. But also he himself experienced quite a bit. According to Padre and Jump Boots, a book written by Crosby and Grayson, after they jumped into Normandy, Chaplain Sampson right away began taking care of the wounded and dying, both spiritually and physically. But German SS troops captured him, marched him down the road to shoot him. They stood him up against the wall with others and raised their guns to shoot him when a German officer spotted his chaplain's insignia. The officer fired over the troops' head to stop them, and Chaplain Sampson identified himself to the officer as a Catholic priest. In response, the officer saluted, bowed slightly, and showed him a Catholic medal pinned inside his uniform. Sampson not only saved these American soldiers, but gave his own blood to wounded soldiers, continued working with no rest, and he also was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. Later, he was captured by German troops again during the Battle of the Bulge. He was a prisoner in a Stalag for a few months, where he was the only Catholic priest taking care of 5,000 other prisoners of war, taking care of the sick, saying Mass daily, and he would do interdenominational services as well. He went on to serve in the Korean War admirably. 1967 to 1971, he was the chief of chaplains, so he was involved also in the Vietnam War as the chief. He would always visit there during holidays. Also on this day in Chaplain Corps history, 6 June 1944, Chaplain Julian Ellenberg, took part in the Normandy landings. According to a July 6, 1944 Stars and Stripes article, the title of the article is 11 Silver Stars Awarded Men of 4th Infantry, Chaplain Among Honored Heroes, Bronze Stars presented to 33. So with the 4th Infantry, it says 11 men of this division, including a chaplain, have received Silver Stars for gallantry and action in the Normandy campaign. And then it goes on to say the chaplain was Julian S. Ellenberg of Greenwood, South Carolina, who went ashore on D-Day only 30 minutes after the initial assault troops. Besides administering spiritual aid to the wounded and dying, Chaplain Ellenberg assisted in establishing and maintaining a first aid station on the beaches under intense enemy fire, and despite slight wounds from shell fragments, remained at the station until it was demolished. On this day in Chaplain Corps history, 6 June 1944, chaplains were there with the troops. They landed with them by air, by sea. They took fire along with them. They put themselves at risk along with the soldiers that they cared for. They were there to take care of their spiritual needs, but also cared for their physical needs. They were there to do whatever they could do to help the soldiers that they were caring for. They volunteered for this service so that they could bring God to soldiers and soldiers to God. They were there, putting themselves in harm's way, doing whatever needed to be done for God and country. This is Daryl Dunsford for the Chaplain Kit. Thanks for tuning in.